Hello, my name is Susan Smati. Thank you so much for watching. So I wanted to come up over here and tell you guys a little story and the reason behind my decision to really mainly focus on astrology and incorporate astrology in everything else that I do. So growing up as an intuitive child, and if you're watching, you probably were intuitive yourself, and you're probably intuitive now. As we're raising our consciousness, as we're becoming more aware of awareness itself in this ascension process, we're becoming aware of and learning about the occult sciences, which astrology is one of them, right? Astrology has been used for thousands and thousands of years. It's ancient. I mean, when the ancient rishis, the sages, were looking up at the stars and figuring out the patterns and what they meant, because it's all about the symbology. A lot of it is based on symbology and the universal meanings of those symbols, right? Which is really fascinating if you think about it, because it really deals with the psyche and the universal symbols of what these things mean, right? And it's interesting because this really goes beyond language. It goes beyond our human capacity to understand human language and communication in that way. So they were able to discern things. And if you know about the yugas, which are the major cycles of life in this planet, you may be aware that we go into these descension cycles where we devolve in our awareness, and we go into these afterwards, we go into these ascension processes where we become more aware of our awareness, right? So in the ancient Vedic knowledge, it's talked about as being 4 major cycles, right? We have the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga is the age of darkness, basically. And so at this point, if you read Sri Yukteswar's book, The Holy Science, you'll understand how we're actually in the ascension cycle within the Dwapara Yuga. I mean, it's really interesting how he came up with all the mathematical points to serve that point, right? But anyway, I don't want to get too distracted here. The point is that we're in this ascension cycle, so we are becoming more aware, and we're able to understand more of the occult sciences, astrology being a major one, right? However, even before where we are now, we were able to still use our astral knowledge, our astral abilities to get information from the beyond the physical realm, right? Because the astral plane is beyond the physical realm. It's more in the psychic level. So when I was a child, I used to do a lot of that. I used to just play around in the astral fields and the psychic field and tell people things about their future, and they all thought I was nuts. But you probably think I'm nuts now, so that's okay. Anyway, we were still able to do that. And as we keep on the ascension cycle, we're more able to understand how to do these things more scientifically or more logically based, and not rely so much on the astral plane or the psychic fields, which is really good, because when we're tapping into the astral fields, what we're actually doing is kind of wasting away our physical abilities to be in this life. So that's why I think Edgar Casey, he was the sleeping prophet. Go look him up. I think he said something about we need to be careful when we're doing things psychically, just because it weathers away our physical life force. And it's a lot like that. And if he didn't say that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say I'm channeling that from somewhere, and you can believe whatever you want to believe. So the reason also that I'm saying this, and that has become my kind of structure of my belief system, is because when I was young and I was reading people, I mean, I was really young when I was doing these things, and I just thought it was just play because I wasn't raised to do these things. It was just basically something I kind of did. I was born that way. So when I was around 10 or 11 years old, I had some free time from school. And my mom, being a teacher at the time at an elementary school, I tagged along because I had nothing better to do, I guess, with my time. So I tagged along, and what ended up happening was I got involved in reading people there. So professionals, the teachers, the administrators of the school, and even the security guard, they were all coming to me to get a palm reading, because at that time I was really focused in on doing palmistry. Meanwhile, no one kind of taught me this, right? I kind of learned on my own. And I was actually, even though I was reading the lines on the palms, because that's what palmistry is about, reading the mounds, the ridges and the lines and how long they are and how pronounced they are and all that stuff. Also the nails tell you a lot too. Even though I was doing that, which is more logical, more scientific, I was actually hooking into the astral field and getting information about these people from the astral field, from the psychic field. And so I was reading people psychically more so than purely scientific. Again, I wasn't trained by someone, that was doing this also. I kind of had to get knocked down and learn on my own. So what ended up happening is that after 2 days of doing that a lot, I mean, it was basically on a cycle. I was reading one person, that person was done, the other person would come, reading that person, next, right? So it was a real interesting cycle. I think I ended up reading like 60, 70 people's palms in those 2 days of tagging along with my mom. And what ended up happening is that I got really sick, physically sick, like no energy. I was like bedridden for at least 24 hours, if I'm remembering correctly. It was so tough on my physical body that I ended up understanding the fact that I was hooking up to the psychic field, and it wasn't really good for my physical state of health, right? And so time passed, and I did the palmistry, I did the card readings, I did all that stuff as I grew up and kind of learned on my own. But then I kind of focused on astrology, which was originally my passion anyway. I mean, I remember being 4 years old and telling my mom I wanted to be an astrologer when I grew up, right? Which she was not okay with, right? She wanted me to be something more professional, right? Except the fact that astrology is actually a profession. I am an astrologer professionally. So anyway, I ended up going back to my original roots, if you would say that, I guess, astrology being my main focus, because I want a way, or I decided that it would be better for my physical health to find a way to focus more on the logic and the science as opposed to getting information from the astral field. Again, purely selfish. because I don't want to be sick, right? So energetically, I get depleted when I do psychic work. And if you're into this at all, you might know what I'm talking about, right? When we are hooking into the astral field and we're doing a lot of astral work, when we're not doing it groundedly, is that a word? I think so. When we're not grounded, right? And we're doing it without the proper training, what ends up happening is that we get physically sick. We could actually cut our life short in a lot of ways, because we're basically weathering away our prana, our life force energy. We're using up that life force energy on reading for people. Why should we do that when we can actually use that energy for our self-realization? And that's not a selfish thing. It's not selfish at all. We should all be focusing, in my opinion, that is, we should all be focusing more on self-realizing, realizing who and what we are, our true potential, our true power, our true sovereignty. So as this ascension process keeps happening, because this is what it is, right? Even though that might be new age lingo, it's not. We're actually ascending in our awareness, we're ascending in our consciousness. So as we're doing that, we're more able to understand, study, and help people with the pure scientific side of things like astrology, or even card readings or palmistry. If we just focus, if we're able to kind of like limit our inclination to go into the astral field to get information, we're actually helping our physical body stay in the physical plane. I mean, unless you don't want to do that, and that's really your choice, right? But I think there's a lot to say about the marriage between spirit and physical form, the marriage between science and spirituality. We're here to balance the scales as humans, I believe. We're here to manage the differences and kind of like merge both worlds, the astral world and the physical material world. That's why we have a physical body, right? So in order for us to have this physical experience, we have to be aware that what we end up doing or not doing has an effect on our ability to actually keep a physical body. So when you're doing psychic work, when you're doing astral work, just keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind and see how you feel. See how you feel physically, see how you feel emotionally, and even mentally. Do you merge too much with people's energy fields? Because we all have this auric field, right? And if you're like me, or how I used to be, I'm still working on this, right? Because my tendency, my inclination is to hook up to the psychic field, the astral field, because that's just, it's quite frankly, to me, that's the easy way out, in a way. The effort comes in trying to understand things logically, trying to understand things pragmatically. I mean, I'm talking from my personal experience here. So I leave this up to you to decide what is true or what is right for you. Just be aware of how you're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally after you read for people, whether you're doing astrology readings or whether you're doing psychic readings, just, you know, astral field, whether you're doing palmistry or tarot cards or oracle cards, whatever it is that you're into, right? because we get very, very creative in how we hook into the astral field. There's only one point of entrance, and we can get that point of entrance in anything. I mean, quite frankly, you can pick up a rock and hook up to the astral field in that manner, right? I mean, if you know anything about shamanism, you can do that. You can divine through reading a rock, even. So there are a lot of ways to go into the astral field and get information in the astral field. And when we're not doing that with a good sense of our groundedness, we end up hurting ourselves physically. And so I believe that our job here as humans is to know ourselves better, know who and what we are, which is a lifetime process to figure out, right? And in the process of us figuring that out, we can end up getting sidetracked in a lot of different directions and even become lost in it, or confused. We could even end up confused, or I don't know. Many things can go wrong in this, okay? So I would like for you to consider finding out who you are, finding out what your potential really is, and if you're on target with that potential or not. And then choose wisely whether you want to keep doing what you're doing or find a different way, like I had to do, right? So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. If you like this video, please like and share your love, not with me only, but with the whole world. Thank you so much. Namaste.